I will quote it again to you. I will quote it again. Wait. למען יראו וייראו. That a person like this have no right to live. And Jesus, as I mentioned before, and you agree with me, I'm not bringing sources that are not exist, and it says he allowed his student to do what Slofcha did. Now you just said no one is allowed to contradict the Torah, and you allow them to do something that the Torah say that it's death penalty. And when they told you, how are you allowing us such a thing? You say, I am the master of the Sabbath. You have to make up your mind. If you're the master of the Sabbath, that means God does not exist. You are a new God. The Torah is not true. If you come and say the Torah is the word of God, be very careful not to modify it, and you come and start changing it according to your need every day, then not only you're not the Messiah, you're not even a student.
Are you allowed to defend yourself on the Sabbath? Are you allowed to minister in the temple on the Sabbath?
Not to the point.
But what is the point on this?
The point is, can I come to one of my students that's sitting here, and he tell me, please, I'm going to lose $1 million if I'm not going to cut my weeds tomorrow, because on Sunday there's a huge storm. I want to take my workers only tomorrow, Rabbi, I'm begging you. Please let me cut my weeds because I'm going to lose $5 million. Whatever the case is. Do you know in history, before Jesus, after Jesus, any rabbi that kept what Jesus suggested, not to move an inch from the Torah, that will have the guts to come and tell a student you're allowed to cut the weeds on the Sabbath? It's such a violation.
But wouldn't you admit that there are exceptions?
Yes, exceptions.
Wouldn't you admit that there are some more important?
Pikuach nefesh, only life risk. There is only one exception to the law. If a person is in a life threat, such as a pregnant woman, she may get into problems, complications, or a person needs a hospital, we are the Jews driving on a Sabbath, or if we need to light fire to save the life of a Jew, even if we're not sure he has high fever, just there's a 1% chance that a person is going to die, comes the Torah and say, the laws were given for us to live, thanks to them, not to die.
How about circumcising a child on the 8th day and violating the Sabbath? Okay. Which comes first?
Comes the Torah in a clear sentence and told us that we are allowed to do it on the 7th day. And if you know, in the chapter 19 of the Talmud, the Mishnah, Perek 19, the Rabbi Eliezer, asking this question, and has about 2 pages with proofs and verses from the Torah. How do we know that we're allowed to circumcise the baby in the 8 days? And you asked before about the oral laws, and maybe that's the time for me to respond to your question. You have to use common sense, which is very simple. What's the common sense? God brings the Jews in front of Mount Sinai and gives them the written Torah. The written Torah say Torahs. You disagree with me, but we'll take it further. Now tell me, if God comes to millions of people, remember they're 1300 years before Christianity, so there's no argument yet. The argument will start 1300 years later, but at this point everybody see that event. Comes God and say to the Jews, here is the Torah I'm giving you, and the Jews listening to Moses speaking. How do we know? Nobody would be interested to take such a difficult religion to keep. So many laws, changing their lifestyle completely, unless if what the Torah says is the truth. So when I read about myself that God spoke to Moses, I'm a witness. If it's not true, I will say, Mr. Moshe, there's a mistake in the book.
May I?
Wait.
It's a good point. It's a good point. It's a very good point.
I will give you the time, but give me another minute. Comes the Torah to Moshe and say, come one Jew and say to the crowd, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, anybody heard here God speaking to Moses and giving him authority to be the leader? Please raise his hand. We are not interested to get it. We are free people. We want to do whatever we want. Like today, people don't want to be religious. What made millions of people all of a sudden became 100% strict and follow the rules? The fact that they heard God. Now, you may come and say, well, how do we know about the oral laws? Very simple. If you search in the entire written Torah, there are 613 laws. Not in one place the Torah gave instructions, the written Torah, the Torah never gave instructions for people how to follow this mitzvah, this commandment.
Which one?
All of them. The 613 laws that describe in the Torah, without the oral laws, there is no way to understand one law. Such, I'll give you an example. The Torah say you have to circumcise a male born on the 8th day. You should cut the orla. We know what we cut when we circumcise a baby. Now, if we wouldn't have the oral laws, right when Moses bring down the Torah, people will say, what you brought us, Chinese book? Okay, God say you should not cut the orla. What's orla? Mordechai would say, orla it's this. He would say, orla it's this. She would say, orla it's the nails. He would say, Moses, what's orla? There's no oral Torah according to your opinion. What's orla? Where we have to cut? God said that if we don't cut it, we're not Jews. We want to be Jews. But God didn't tell us where to cut. Is it possible? I'm losing my eternity if I'm not circumcise my children, and God will not tell me even Aleph Bet how to do it, how to cut, what happened when the baby is sick. One question. Second, the Sabbath. The Sabbath. I got to keep the laws of the Sabbath. I don't know if you know, but there are
may I interject?
There are thousands of laws.
They hear you every week. Maybe I can say something.
No, I'm answering what you ask about the oral laws. You ask me a question, I'm answering.
We need new rules. That's what we need.
Okay, so you say it like this. You say the oral laws.
We need an oral law for our discussion here.
I'm asking, you ask me a question, I'm answering you. And the point is like this. God say you have to observe the Sabbath, and a person that does not observe the Sabbath, exclude himself from Judaism. Why? It's the covenant that we made with God. It's applied to Jews, by the way, also. Not only to non-Jews. But a Jew that refuses to keep the law of the Sabbath, he puts himself in violation. And he is not able to do certain Jewish holy ceremony. Why? Because it's the covenant that God made with the Jewish nation for eternity. That's the word of the Torah. Now, where does it say in the written Torah, from the thousands of laws that we keep, most of us here, where does it say it? Comes the Torah in 12 different places and say that a Jew does not keep the law of the Sabbath, he will be stoned to death, and his soul will cut for eternity. Tell me please, in the entire written Torah, God comes and give me an order. You should keep the Sabbath. You should not do any work in Sabbath. Comes a Jew that just accepted the book and say, okay, God, I'm willing to listen to you. Where are the instructions? There's nowhere in the world where it's a one detail about the Sabbath. The same thing to tefillin, the same thing, each one of the laws. Comes the Torah and separate between the written laws and the oral laws. And you know why? The non-Jews will not have it.
Okay.
Because if the non-Jews will have it in their hand today, nobody in the world will know if he is an original descendant of the Jewish nation. Why? Everybody wanted to be a son of God in that generation, because the Goyim, the non-Jews, they wanted to be religious as they are today. They want to join the nation of God, who everybody admit that got the Torah from Mount Sinai. Everybody, the Goyim, admit it. And they translated it to 70 languages, which show interest. So what do we have to do?
Yosef,
if
wait a
everything
second.
will be in the book,
Wait a second.
we will become Jews in 2
you're
minutes.
somebody who cares a lot about evidence, and yes. I respect that. And you say that there must be an oral law, because if there was no oral law, we wouldn't know how to circumcise.
Not even a simple law.
Okay,
We would not
but
know.
Abraham was somehow able to circumcise, and he didn't have any oral law. The oral law, according to you, didn't come until Moses. How was it that Abraham was able to be a Jew and live before God and not have the oral law? Maybe there are other ways that they were able to follow the law without some mythical oral law for which you have no evidence.
I have news for you. There is a sentence in the Torah that says that I loved Abraham because he kept my Torahs, again, plural, written and the oral, and the laws and everything. עקב אשר שמר אברהם את תורותיי, מצוותיי וחוקותיי. Abraham kept all my laws. Comes the oral Torah and ask your question. The oral Torah say how...
Just prove my point.
No, the opposite.
I'll tell you how you prove my point. When you said that Abraham kept my Torahs, that proved the point that Torahs are instructions or laws and not two separate bodies. Because according to Jewish tradition, there was no oral law until Moses.
Who gave Abraham all the instructions, what to do and how to do, before the Torah was published? And I want to get your attention to one thing that the Torah says, that before the world was created,